Welcome to my very first podcast. And I thought it was perfectly fitting because I get asked so many times why I am the way I am and why I love to work and how I've become an entrepreneur. So I thought the best way for me to describe or show you guys or tell you guys why I'm the way I am is not only have my dad and my sister that's just as crazy as me on my podcast for my first episode. So I want to introduce you to my dad, Earl Graham, and to my sister, Johan Graham. Thank you guys so much for doing this for me today.
Love being able to do this. Yes.
So I think this is my dad's first podcast he's ever been on. I don't know, Joe, have you been on a podcast before?
Just the one we did in Vegas. Was that?
Oh, okay. Well, that's
yeah. Or is that a TV show?
That would be a TV show.
And yes, this is my first podcast, and I've never listened to one either.
So this is all newbies for all of us because we've never done this before. But what I wanted to share with you guys is what a phenomenal upbringing we've had growing up with my dad and his entrepreneur spirit. And when I get asked a lot of questions, why I'm the way I am, or why I do things a certain way, it's basically because I've either watched my dad or he's taught us how to be self-surviving, motivated entrepreneurs. So, Dad, what is it truly like raising three daughters that we are all very different, I would say, but very goal driven. What was that like? What has that been like for you? And what are you most proud about what we're doing today?
So, what was that like? As I look back on it, it was a gift from God that I got to raise three girls. I was too young to know most of the time what I was doing, but I did have some goals in mind. And on your mother and I would talk about how we should raise you girls and what we wanted when we got done. And your mother was a independent thinker, but had no idea how to do those things because of how she was raised. I was raised, as you well know, in a very uh, tough setting. Your grandfather was a World War II veteran survivor, a depression survivor, and he never left survival mode and always stayed in survival mode. And so we learned early on that nothing, if you didn't work extremely hard, you received nothing. There were things that I wanted to accomplish in my life, and once I had three girls, of course, I wanted to accomplish and have three dynamic women when we got done. And I think that goal has been met, and that makes me very proud of all three of my daughters. All right. You're very goal oriented. All three of you have plans. Most of them are a little different, but not really. Not really. We all reach for the sky. When I was a young man, I knew I wanted to be an auctioneer. I knew nobody in the industry, and I worked very hard to obtain that. And I realized that I had to work harder than anybody else because I had no advantages, and I had to use a very small vocabulary when I talked in public because I just absolutely have a tough time saying some words, and they don't flow very easily usually. But I knew if I worked hard, if I worked extremely hard and was always there, I would get those opportunities. And I instilled that into every one of my girls. And I think that's why you guys are all really tough workers. One of the dreams your mother had early on was that she could be in the horse business. And she accomplished that by ended up running a rent string, probably the largest rent string of horses in the western part of the United States, or at least California, for many years. And for a young girl that grew up in the mountains in Big Bear, and to have accomplished that and still raise a family was a phenomenal model, I think, for you girls to see. So we always tried to have faith in family, and we always had was a big part of your upbringing. And maybe I like to think first and foremost, but maybe not. You guys would be a better judge of that than I am. Uh, and then we always tried to set examples, and those examples always required a lot of work. And we never took typical vacations like normal families. A vacation would be going to the ranch and working. That
Yes.
was our vacation.
And our plane ride was riding in the nose of the stock trailer with
Yes,
walkie-talkies in the
yes,
summer or the
Yes.
winter.
that was the RV. The RV was
No.
that.
The best is if we'd walkie-talkie dad and tell him we had to go to the bathroom, and he'd say, "Just get down there with the horses and go." So we
Yeah.
did. They were really broke. Those are
So
really bomb proof.
so you girls learned that. I think you all learned how to have fun doing your work. Okay, so I don't know
I
if that
know.
answers what you wanted or not.
No, it does. I mean, I feel like, I turned 50 this year, and Johan's a whole whopping 4 years younger than me. Uh, so she's coming up on it fast too. But, I have friends that are already talking about retirement, and they can't wait till they retire. And because of how you have raised us to love what we do and work hard and pick things that we enjoy, I'm never going to retire. That sounds awful.
Quite often when people ask me when I'm going to retire, I tell them I've been retired most of my life because I've got to do every day pretty much what I've wanted to do. Now I went out and got myself in traps thinking I was going to have a lot of fun doing something and got in the middle of it and realized that it wasn't quite as much fun as I thought it was. But I put myself there. And sometimes that was traps where I had a lot of employees. And once you have them, you have to make sure that you can place those employees back in some other gainful employment before you happen to close that trap or sell that trap or do something different with that situation you got yourself into. And not necessarily would they be not good money makers, but they became to where you were feeling like you were going to work. And your dad's been very blessed. There's been very few times in his life that he's ever had to feel that way.
Yes, I agree. You've taught us that. So I want to change gears a little bit and talk about our phenomenon over here that's started Bougie Cattle Company, and want to talk about a little bit how the discussion went down, because our family is from a ranching family. We've raised phenomenal cattle, but my sister Johanna started a company called Bougie Cattle Company, and she has her own herd of cattle. So take me through, Joe, how when you decided what you wanted to do and how you were going to explain to dad you were going to raise mini cattle instead of regular cattle.
Well, when I quit drinking, I was like, what else can I do to piss my father off? No, when I wanted to, there's a few things that were happening in our world at that same time that Bougie Cattle Company was born. So definitely the Lord looked over that. But one of the things that happened is my husband and I moved down the road from my parents so we could be closer to them. And we kind of started our own little ranch, and I wanted to buy some Highlands, and my dad said, absolutely not. So then I tried to buy some of these mini cows on an auction, and I couldn't get one. So then I kind of started studying, how to breed them, what we could do. At the same time, some changes with our ranching life was happening with my mom and dad, and I'll let him touch on that. So I was just thinking, what can I do to be a part of the cattle industry in a world that didn't quite look at like my parents? And that's kind of how Bougie Cattle Company came. But when I initially talked to dad about it, his words were pretty much exact. You want to raise Highlands? Prehistoric pieces of shit? Orphism in cattle, which goes against every fiber and soul that your mom and I have put together in a breeding program, and you're going to call it Boogie. And I'm like, Earl. Boogie. Bougie Cattle Co. And I just wanted to do, as an entrepreneur and someone that does in California, handle a lot of laws. In my auction company, we have our federal firearms license, we have our car dealer's license, we have our real estate license. We're running over 25 employees. We're under an immense amount of stress and pressure. I was also getting sober for the 1800th time in my life. And I just was like, what can I do in my life to bring peace and happiness, not only to myself, but to others? And when I started raising these little calves, it was like the floodgates of happiness happened. It's kind of like raising, like if you were a 12-year-old, 14-year-old girl and you wanted to raise unicorns,
It
that's
is.
kind of what Bougie Cattle Company is to me and every individual that buys one. It's not just literally the thing that separates my cattle company from a commercial brand or any other company, or cattle company. Buying a Bougie baby is not only buying a little pet calf, which is crazy in its own, pet calves, but it's a whole experience. And then everyone that buys one becomes part of our community. And it's just the most amazing thing I've ever done.
So, what I want to touch on what you talked about, which a lot of people in society now, I feel like shy away from, or the way where they're raising their kids. And when you're in the moment with dad and this is happening, you're pissed. But I want to touch on where, you told dad, and there's things in my life I've told dad I've wanted to do. And he comes back with, no, that's a dumb idea, or, whatever the reason, you're not going to do that. And instead of us, I mean, sometimes I'm sure we're like, okay, dad's right, because he's normally right at the end of the day, which sucks because we want to be right. But what I truly love that he's doing, or what he's taught us to do, is instead of you just being like, well, I'll just get a few cows, I don't care what dad says, or, no, I'm not going to do it. You took it to a whole new level with your genetics. And I mean, I'm just amazed that what you know about breeding mini cattle. And I mean, dad could have not ever taught you that about regular cattle, I don't think. Like, I don't know, like it's just something snapped in you, and it's been just remarkable. But everything, all the things that I've went to dad and said, I'm going to start a flip-flop company with bling on it. I'm going to start a sock company. And whether he thinks it's good or bad, he gives us some kind of pushback. And I feel like that's always made us level up in a sense. I don't know.
I think with dad, number one is he's done the cattle business for a long time, so he knows what the pitfalls would be, and he brought that to our attention. Because I mean, who'd have thought pet cattle and breeding dwarfism? I mean, I get where he's coming from. It's logical. But what did happen is, even though we joke about this, dad has supported my program every step of the
Yeah.
way. So what dad already knew about cattle, I didn't have to learn. So I got to take time learning something else, because he already did the pathway of the basic of all of the basic part, not the basic, but all the feeding and the housing. I mean, I didn't even have panels to put my cattle in. So dad, was able to provide and taught me what he had to figure out on his own is, the the, the beginning breedings, the traditional ground covering, the nutrition, the vaccinations. I mean, I could just go on and on and on about the things that I didn't have to learn, because dad did it for me. So I got to focus on other things. So, I mean, it's definitely a win-win. And now, because he was, like, what kind of breeding program are you going to do? We get a good joke out of it, but he still gave me the foundation.
No, agreed. And then now, I mean, and secretly now he has a whole yard of mini donkeys. So he secretly loves it. But I just feel like, even with Christy, our other sister that's not on here, she had a different path and the things she wanted to do. And I just always feel like we were raised, I've always said my dad's raised me like a man or a guy. because it's a guy's world out there. And especially for you, Joe, because you chose the auction company where, Johanna and I both went to the same auction school as my dad in Billings, Montana. And I love doing auctions with Joe, but other than that, I don't like it. So, but he's really taught us how to withstand anything in a man's world. And so, Dad, I just want to say thank you. That I know it was probably we were mad at you and didn't like you at some points when you were doing that. And I feel like that's happened with my own daughters that I've had. I've told them, you're not liking what I'm doing right now, but if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I know you can survive. And I feel like, Dad, when you put your head on your pillow at night, you've raised us to survive.
Well, that was our intent, was to make sure you girls could survive and flourish. Not just flourish, but flourish even beyond us. So, you guys have done that. All of my girls have went beyond their parents. They've taken it a step further, maybe several steps further. Okay, and I don't mean that just financially. I mean, you've really dug in and learned your trades. You really dug in and learned how to be an entrepreneur. Both of you have learned how to really dig in and learn how to be an entrepreneur and pass up your dad as far as that abilities go. You know, we go back and we look at Joe's Bougie Cattle Company. No, it would have been nice if she'd have said, "Hey, I want to get into the Angus deal, or maybe the Hereford Association, and really get into that." But this is much more financially stable, and it's probably a lot more fun for her to do. She does bring something to the table when it comes to people's happiness, and you see those people so excited about buying one, and when it's at the auction and they don't get it, I mean, they just pout, and you can see they're going to go home and pout for days. And Joe tries to explain to them that you're going to be sad when you go home and not take a baby with you, but there's only so many babies, and there's more buyers than there are babies for those every auction that she does. So you get to watch that. I couldn't, like I said before, I couldn't be prouder of my three girls. They've taken it all a step further, quite a few steps further, and whatever it is. I mean, but just look how goofy things are. I decided to be an auctioneer. I was a young boy that stuttered. I came from nothing other than my dad was in the cattle business, but I didn't know anybody in the industry, and I got in it and was very successful in the auction industry, and it enabled us to do a lot of things. And we have ranches, and we get to live a lifestyle that we enjoy. Your mother and father do. And you girls are all working very hard to have your lifestyles that you enjoy. But just think how ironic this is, that two girls that are entrepreneurs, one decides to raise these little miniature cattle that absolutely have no value more than what somebody's willing to pay for them. Okay, that there is no uh, market price established at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. You, of all things, decide to sell socks and make a business out of selling socks, and being very successful at it. Okay, so when you look at the things that you dream up and you go do, and you bring this to your dad, and he looks at it and goes, it's not going to be the easiest thing to do, and neither one of you can say that your paths have been easy or that they are easy. Okay, but you've chose to do something and take it, and you have to work extremely hard at it. I was able to help Joe kind of set her program up, but she's the one that has gotten in, and there's no records on any of these animals. So these people have never kept any kind of records. When we look at genetics on whether it's dairy cows or beef cows or horses or whatever it is, there's all these stats that are kept, and we know that this particular bloodline are exceptionally good milkers, or they're exceptionally good ribeyes, or whatever it is that you're breeding for. Okay, and you can introduce that into your herds. Joe doesn't get to do that. She's sitting down with scratch, and she has to look at these, and she looks at her babies and sees what she doesn't like about them and what she does like, and then she makes a decision if she's going to use that bull. Try to make a decision, when you use this bull on this cow, what you end up with. You're the same thing in your sock business. This isn't a stable that is something that that, when people go out to buy a Christmas gift, they typically are not thinking, I'm going to go buy my wife socks. So you have to have something that goes pow. And when a man walks in that store and sees these cool socks and maybe has heard the girls talking in the background, he goes, oh my God, here's these lucky Chucks. I'm going to get these for my wife or something. Okay.
That's right.
And so you have to take your marketing above and beyond what would
Yes.
normally be marketing, and you got to have something that absolutely catches them, and especially today, because everything we do today, we may see 30 different ads in a day just without even watching television. Okay, just that comes across our iPhones today. We might get 30 different ads between our emails and different things that are text to us, and if you look at Facebook at all or anything like that. I mean, so you've got to separate yourself from all of those other people that are trying to get money from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And both of you have had to have this extensive marketing program. And of course, that's all the auction business was marketing. So even though we have an agricultural entrepreneur background, your whole life was marketing and figuring out how we're going to sell something that somebody else doesn't want anymore. And that's what, so you guys aren't afraid of taking on anything, and you've shown that, and you've been very successful at it. And so anyway, but it's just
Oh,
kind of ironic. One girl's trying to sell socks and doing a great job, and the other girl's selling these cattle that have absolutely no value and being making any other breeding program look stupid financially, and as far as fun goes as well.
yes. Well, I mean, and I think that goes back to, which when people hire me to consult and they, we talk about marketing or their product or, at the end of the day, people have to connect an emotion or a lifestyle, something they want to be a part of. So if I want to have a little unicorn in my backyard, I'm going to buy me a bougie cattle. I mean, and I mean, Joe's story is amazing. I mean, everything she's been through, now being sober for over 2 years, a lot of people connect with her on that. And it's just, I feel like this is so part of God's plan for her, now that she's really coming into her own. And I feel like the same, with Gypsy Soul, it was such an emotion with those shoes. Um, and I wanted to create that again. I wanted people to feel like this just isn't an ordinary pair of socks. This is something special, and they make me feel special. And Dad, I think we learned a lot of that from you and Mom when my parents had sell barns when we were growing up. And everything Mom and Dad did, they made every buyer that came to that sell barn or every horse seller. Dad personally talked to everybody. He'd go out and talk to them. Everybody felt a connection to Mom and Dad, even the people that came up and tried to tell me they could write a check for stuff and lie to me and say that Earl said. And I said no. So I would get fired from the cashier window because I wasn't as sweet as my dad. But Mom and Dad, even Mom with her horse trailer business, all the little extra things Mom always did. And so we've watched that through our lives with people that you have helped. Mom and Dad have helped. I don't even know the numbers of how many people Dad and Mom have taken under their wings, helped them financially, helped them start businesses, gave them jobs, gave them places to live. Just truly donating their time, donating things, so much a part of them. But it's just, I feel like that extra, and so many people miss that in their businesses and just the people they're around. They just want to, it's just mediocre. And to me, if you're going to stand out in today, like you're saying, Dad, with 30 different ads, 50 different ads, you've got to be extra special and somehow connect to make people feel extra special.
You said something there, and it was something I realized a number of years ago, and you girls have been able to do this out ahead of me. But I was having a conversation with one of my buddies one day, and we were talking about putting deals together. And I was always pretty proud of myself if I wanted to put a deal together. If I got that guy in the cab of my pickup and carried him around with me for 4 or 5 hours, when we got done, we had a deal. It wasn't always just exactly how I wanted it, but we had a deal put together. And I was telling him, I says, I just wish there was a way to be able to do 10 of those deals in a day. Today, you kind of need to be able to do that to scale things up. And how do you do that today? And of course, you do that. We have so many tools to be able to do those things today. And one of those is reaching out through the media system that are available for us today. And both of you girls have really learned how to go make a bunch of deals in a day without and make people feel special as though they've been riding around in the pickup with you for a while without having to do that. And that's I think that's a key today is how do you do that? You mentioned that I made everybody feel good at the sale barn, but that's a time consuming situation and it very limits to the amount of people you can deal with. So a big horse sale for us was 200 head of horses, and today, if you're really going to scale that up, you would need to do 300 or 400. Now you no longer can go and make everybody, and even at 200 head, those days I couldn't, but we had a lot of days it was less than 100 head of horses. You could go make those folks feel special there. And so you guys, that's a big part of what you guys are doing when I look at your ads and I look at how you reach out to folks. You're making those folks, everybody that listens or sees that ad feel special. And then when they come and get something, you have the product to back it up. And I think that's the key word. It doesn't do no good to be sincere if you don't have the product to back it up.
No,
but
great.
Both of you have worked really hard on your products, and you've got boxes full of socks that didn't measure up, or maybe you've thrown them out by now.
Yeah.
But you went through a lot of socks figuring out, sending them to your mother or your sister, whoever, try these things on, and
Yeah.
you didn't like the reports always, okay? But
Yeah.
you took it and you went back and you figured out how to make a sock that is superior to any other sock out there for what you're trying to accomplish. And the same thing with Joe. When she started buying these cattle and bringing them in, I says, now, let's get the backhoe right handy because we're going to be burying some cattle. You can't go bring cattle in from all over the United States and expect these things, because we're not buying cattle from people. It's different when you go buy your bulls from a bull producer that absolutely understands vaccine and nutrition and sends you those bulls properly, or a set of heifers. Joe is buying stuff from this person, that person, that really weren't cattle folks, okay? They thought they were, and the biggest problem with most niche businesses, whatever it is people don't want to really learn how to be an entrepreneur. They think, if I go buy 6 mini cows, I'm going to just be in the mini cow business, and I don't have to learn anything about vaccination. I don't have to learn anything about anything. And the same thing in your business. A lot of people think they're going to go make T-shirts or they're going to go make a product, and they really don't have to. They don't really have to learn how to market properly or even have a great product. So when that person gets it, they go, "My God, I got to have another one of these." All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And both of you have done that. You both went out and had a lot of failures to get to the product that you're now trying to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, and that's what I think, the sincerity, we are in business to sell things and we want people to connect. But at the end of the day, we truly believe in what we're doing. We're truly sincere of what we're putting out on social media, and we're being our true selves, which you have always told us to be, and not everybody's going to like you. We're not for everybody.
No,
and that's okay.
no.
That's okay. But it's really special to think back. You didn't even realize, I didn't even realize back then what you and Mom were showing us, and how hard, I have so many people try to, hire me for consulting, and, they're telling me I've done this. And I'm like, well, what about your numbers? Like the money part. And they're like, oh, I have to know that part. I'm like, you have to, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to do all of it until it scales and you can pay someone to do that. So I love that you have taught us to love every angle of every part of being an entrepreneur. Johan's probably not saying that right now because her bookkeeper quit yesterday. So anybody that need a bookkeeping job, she's hiring, but you better be really good.
Well, that's what you're saying there is exactly right. But along with Joe's Bougie cattle, of course, if anybody wants to look at it, it's I-15 auctions or bid fast and last auctions, and you can go and get the app off your iPhone for that. It's a free app, and you can look at the auction business that she has, her and her husband have, and it's a phenomenal business. Uh, Myself and her mother and her, we started that business from the ground up out of our cattle auction business. And then about 5 years ago, uh, Joe and Jeff bought that from your mother and I, and they have taken it way beyond where it was when they purchased it, and done a fantastic job. So it's just not the bougie business that she does. She has a husband. Uh, there's 3 boys involved in that family, and they have one of the sons that work in the business as a manager. And when I look at how they do all of that and accomplish all of that, it's really phenomenal. When I look at you, it's not just your sock business. You've got 2 daughters that are going to college. You're very
Mhm.
involved in their life. You do a lot with them. You have a husband that has a huge business. If anybody wants to, really look at a great business, Van Garden is a huge, we call it a landscaping business, but it's much, much more than that.
Yeah, it is.
All the things that he touches and does for folks, and the unique work that he does and the great work that he does. He's got been published in several magazines for his work. Uh, you know, so you're a part. You keep the books on that. You make sure everything on that end of that's running along with your sock business. So when we talk about it here, and we're talking about, it's a lot more that I'm proud of, just other than the bougie business and
Right.
your sock business. I mean, I get to see the whole. I get to watch the whole thing from the position, the portal of life I'm in, and other people only get to know you as the sock lady or the bougie cattle girl, and doesn't get to know that this huge other circle of life that you have. Okay. Along with that, you're very active with your Lorinda. You're very active with your horses, and you love to compete either in barrels or showing horses.
Yeah,
And
Joe's horse. Joe's horse.
yes, and yes, so you have these other interests in life, and it's great because you know, I don't think, and again, that's kind of how you were raised. Your dad never did just one thing. I mean, he might have had a sale barn, but at the same time, he might have had a construction company too, and he might
Mhm.
have been. And we've always had a ranch up in the central coast of California that your mother and I had started very early in our lives. And you kids always seen us do 2 or 3 or 4 things. We were typically some kind of landlords, either had houses we
Yep.
rented or doing something in the real estate industry. And we was always trying to do 3 or 4 things. So there was always something that created drama. And so, you guys got used to drama. Hopefully you did, because you've created your own dramas in your life now. It's not just a real simple situation where I'm going to do my socks, la 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 la. You've got, if it's not, if a lot of times after everything else is done is when you have the time to work on your socks.
Yes. No.
After
Well,
Joe has all of her real estate clients, all of her other things done, then she gets to go do her bougie cattle. And when she takes time off and off of everything, and she thinks she's going to go down and feed her calves and stuff, I've been down there many times when she's trying to talk on a real estate deal while she's mixing the feed or trying to do something. And not only does she have calves, but this young lady has zebras, she has camels, she has porcupines, she has goats, and she has horses. It's quite an experience to come to their operation and see their bougie cattle ranch. You get to see a lot of things, and even down to their barn cats are kind of unique because they all have 6 toes, and so I think she's
well,
starting a breed of 6 toe cats.
well, Dad, and it's, you're we're still, I mean, all of us girls are still watching the dynamics of my parents, because they're in the middle of rezoning all of their ranch right there in Southern California, in Apple Valley. So some of you that know me or know my parents, um, So they've been in the cattle business forever. But now my dad is in the container business. So as my dad's evolving in his 70s, he's not slowing down. He's not changing anything like some 70-year-olds.
And he's still pissing everyone off around him.
So, yes. So different companies rent land from my dad on the back part of his property because there's no water anymore. There's no, it's desert. So now he rents that land out and they store containers on it and they pay him. And it's fantastic, which everyone around him that has, I don't think they've cleaned up their yards in 30 years, and dad's looks immaculate. It looks like a white building sitting there. It's the craziest thing. So now dad's dealing with all the drama of that. So see, I know what poor Joel, my husband, he keeps thinking I'll settle down the older I get. And I already know, I think it's going to be opposite. I'm just going to get faster.
Thinking mom and dad's life was becoming a little peaceful, but then container land happened.
Yes.
And it has brought, frustrations to mom and dad, of course, but at the same time, it's brought a lot of fun, a lot of purpose, a lot of creativity, and also, from dad and mom, I think it's more learning. It's like they just continue to keep growing, keep learning, keep asking for more. And I love seeing that. At first, sometimes I get nervous, like I want them just to rest and relax. Maybe I want it, maybe I don't know if I want it so much for them as I hope at some time I will find that peace. But then when I take another look at it, I'm like, I just love how much my parents always keep fighting for more. And they're just so wonderful because now, like my parent, I still take all my problems to my mom and dad. Everything. And I can keep doing that because they keep learning and growing. So they're always going to be a wonderful resource for knowledge because they won't stop. And I love that.
When you talk about us taking our land and putting containers on it. So for folks that don't understand about California, California has always been the state that goes through a lot of changes. When I was a young man here, if you lived down in the Inland Empire and you owned 10 acres and you planted oranges on that 10 acres, you could live in a very nice home and make a very nice living off of 10 acres of oranges. Today, all those little 10-acre ranches are cut up into subdivisions, and they're all subdivisions. And when you get that many people, life changes, different things changes. But one of the things that changed for us, we live in a desert, but our desert has an aquifer of water underneath it. Where our property sets, within 60 foot of under the surface, there's an unlimited amount of water. But what they did is they went in and they allocated that water, and basically cities and large companies got that water. Some small farmers got it, but it became very, very valuable, and they soon sold it to their water rights to other people. We never sold off any of our water rights, but they kept restricting the amount of water that we could take out to where we could no longer farm it. So we're paying taxes on a piece of property that we could no longer farm. Meanwhile, while this is going on, some people got the bright ideas to come into a commercial agricultural area and build estate properties, thinking that this is a fantastic place, and it is. I mean, here we live on a piece of ground that I can go out and shoot my guns. I can go out and set up targets. I can shoot my big rifles, my pistols, my shotguns, whatever I want. And in 3 miles, I can be at most any restaurant, Lowe's, Home Depot. I mean, it's just fantastic. Basically 3 miles in either direction from our place, you're at any kind of a restaurant or store you might want to bank, whatever you want to do. And yet you have this cool rural lifestyle. So people thought it was a great place to build their 10-acre estate properties. They forgot they were in commercial zoning. So all of a sudden we get an opportunity to do something that's legal in our zoning, and they don't want to do it. But they forgot they had moved on a truck route in an agricultural area, and now all of a sudden they're faced with the fact that ag still stands out because even though it's setting containers, it's an ag activity. And so we see a lot of things happen. When Joe said earlier in the conversation about things had changed in our life, one of them was the main thing that had changed and why she really started looking into doing a different kind of cattle. We had a huge ranch that we had leased for over 20 years. Environmentalists come in and sued the landlord, and their settlement was that he ended up having to pay out about $7,000 in what they called environmental damages because he allowed cattle to be there. And for them to back off, the idea was not to have any cattle on the property. Because there was a environmentally protected toad on the endangered species list, they were able to do this. Well, we were off of it 2 years, and a fire came along and burnt up a lot of the toad, burnt up quite a bit of the ranch, and we have been ever since that fire. We've been back in negotiations how we're going to introduce cattle back onto the ranch, and it looks like we're going to do that. But that took out our whole genetics of Angus cattle that we had had for years and years and years. And some of those cows had went back from when I was still in high school that we'd kept some of those genetics alive. So all of that had to go away because I had no other place at that time to put those cattle. Our Central Coast ranch had droughted out. We'd had 2 years of really severe droughts up there. So all we could do was sell off all of that stuff. But we'll come back and it's going to be fine. But those are the things that happen when you have too many people. And that's all it is. But you girls have got to witness those things happening and understand that it doesn't matter where you are in life, unless you just want to sit down and go buy a little place and sit somewhere and watch Fox News every day. You're going to have a lot of trauma still in your life, and you're going to get the opportunity to learn a lot of new things. And this last, I think ever since 19, I think all of us have had a huge learning curve that none of us expected. Okay, the COVID has kind of like unleashed. Either you dug your feet in and really learned how to survive in society, or you just joined the sheep and went on with a lot of other folks and decided that, hey, I'm not going to work very hard anymore. I'm not going to do this very hard. I'm just going to kind of take it easy because the government is going to take care of us, and that's what they found out during COVID was if we don't work, they're going to send us money. If we can't work, it's okay. And so I think this has been a huge learning experience for all of us, and nothing is normal to what it once was. But it also gives us a lot of opportunities. And so,
No,
anyway,
I mean, I agree with that statement so much. COVID really changed a lot of people's mindsets. And even, today, Joe and I talk about, trying to hire people, me even trying to find an assistant. It's a different mindset.
mm-hmm,
And so many people are not raised or think the way we were raised. And there are a lot, but and to however you were raised, that's great, whatever. But at the end of the day, unless you're building, growing, learning, pushing, how boring your life is. Like, just the stress of everything. The biggest thing you've always taught us, Dad, is life is a game. And when I wake up at 2 in the morning and I'm stressing about whatever, I'm like, Lorinda, you're 50 years old. How broke have you been in the recession of '07? How stressed have you been when you were losing Gypsy Soul? How stressed have you been? How many hundreds of times? And guess what? God's got you. It's going to be fine. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to take away your birthday. So I just thank you so much, even though that's the simplest advice, I guess you could say. But it's been the best advice.
well, at the end of the day, if you have faith and family, you have a roof over your head and you have food, absolutely the rest of life is a game. And it's just how
Dad, you need to make sure all those things, but a mini calf in your backyard and a pair of Gypsy Souls on your feet. Then everything's gonna
how
be
about the Lucky
okay.
Lucky Chucks?
Yeah, Lucky Chucks. Oh.
Hey, she's still living that. Because you know why? You know how many pair her and my mom still have? They're still, they probably selling them on the black market for thousands of dollars.
But you made them, so even though I don't wear them ever, I can't throw them out. So they
No,
go where you go.
no, Dad. Yes. If
You know,
you're
there's a couple of things that if you hang on to in life, one is that, and the other is no matter how bad life gets, if all it takes is money to fix it, you never have a problem. You just get to play the game a little harder, maybe a little tougher. You know, everybody wants to leave California because they always say, well, it's so tough to do business here. It's just so hard with all the regulations and all the things you got to do. And I think, you know, I look at folks and a lot of folks leave our states because it's easier somewhere else. And somebody will look at me and say, when are you going to get smart and when are you going to leave California? And I go, you know, I've never ran in my life from a good fight. I've never ran somewhere because it gets easier. I said, so you think that people that they'll leave their home. They've lived there for 40 or 50 years. They'll leave their home because it's a little tough. And you think that's a good person? I said, thank God they left. Thank God they left. You know, the biggest problem with California is, and the biggest problem with most areas are, very few people get involved in their communities and they don't do much. And that's the other thing that we've all learned to do is try to get involved in our communities in some way, you know?
yes,
And it's little
yes,
ways, and you don't have to go be an elected official. There's plenty of different boards that you can set on to work and shape things and do things in your community, you know, and that's really what happened to California was we just didn't keep any of these checks and balances in place, and it's kind of run away with itself. And maybe it will turn around, maybe it won't turn around. But at the end of the day, like you said, they can't take your birthday from you and they can't chew you up and eat you. So all they can do is make life a little tough. But anybody that's tough can get through that. You know,
yep.
certainly you got to be tougher than some puss-gutted politician or some lazy ass bureaucrat. And if you're not, then you need to leave.
Well, we're going to end on that note today. I think
All right.
we've touched on so many things. So we've touched on if you're in Southern California and you have an estate that you need to list and sell all the items in, go check out Bid Fast and Last. And if you really want to change your life and smile every day when you walk outside, then you definitely need to go buy a Bougie Cattle Company calf. And your next sell is going to be when, Joe, on the calves?
February 2nd.
So for Valentine's Day, that's the perfect gift. And Dad he's got panels and hay and what, I don't even know what Dad's doing all the time anymore. Cattle, beef, you can buy. Yeah,
Three Sisters Cattle Company.
Yes, Three Sister Cattle Company. So I will post all this in the show notes and you can look everybody up and check it out. But that's all in Southern California. But Dad will ship to you wherever. So just call Earl. He'll get you taken care of. But I want to thank you guys so much for doing this today. I hope we do this lots of times and we get a great response and everybody wants to hear all the Earlisms again.
Yes.
Love you guys. Very, very proud of both of you. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.